having cut my teeth on underground papers, both, selling the Berkeley Barb when I was living in Berkeley, and then just as a street vendor to try and make some money on the side, because I was only making $5 a month, right, from the Pacific Counseling Service. But and then working on the GI paper at Fort Lewis, I had pretty much been convinced that of the power of the underground press, or what we called the underground press in those days, that nowadays we tend to call the independent media or the alternative press or whatever, in more polite terms. But in those days we called it the underground press, even though we were publishing it legally. I realized what power there was in that. We stopped a war, and one of the reasons we stopped that war was because of those papers. In fact, one time years later, I happened to be working with this guy who I didn't know, but it was one of those things where, one part of a department was slow and they sent people to some other department to work. And I started talking to the guy and quickly realized that he was a vet and I was a vet, and we started talking, and he says that the best part of his military experience was this great underground paper that used to be at Fort Lewis. Well, having worked on the paper as a part of the staff, I knew full well that he wasn't a staff member. He was a reader. He was a reader of the paper, and years later he was telling a stranger who, at that point, I hadn't told him any of my story, and so he had no idea that I had any connection with it. And he was telling a stranger how the best part of his military experience was reading the paper that I had helped to publish. And it kind of closed the feedback loop that, we could have worked together all day and not had that conversation, or we could have never worked together. But through just the coincidence, I realized that this stuff has incredible impact on people. One time years later, I was at a party, and somebody came up and says, "Are you Randy Rowland?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "I was a company clerk in the Army, and I saw your application for conscientious objector. It came across my desk, and I read it, and it changed my life." And just by coincidence, at that point, neither of us in the military anymore, and just by coincidence, we happened to be at a party. And he happened to hear my name, and he came and sought me out because he had remembered my name from this stupid application, having never met me before in my life. He had no idea what I looked like or anything about it. And years later, he comes up and he says, "Your failed application changed my life." And I thought, wow, this stuff, you really can impact people. You can reach people. It's not that an agitator can stand up and give such a brilliant speech that it will take people who are perfectly happy with their lives and turn them into, revolutionaries ready to go storm the castle or something of the sort. But when people are thinking about things and are like torn up and trying to make sense of it, trying to figure out what their perspective on something, where objective reality is what is causing them to ever even question things. If somebody comes along at the right moment with some kind of some thought that makes sense out of it and gives the people something to do about it, it can have profound impact on their lives and on the movement as a whole. And we can, I already know from my own personal experience, we can stop a war. I know we can do it. We have done it. And I was part of the people, just one small piece of a much larger deal. But the truth is, the American public, one subset of which was the American soldier, stopped a war. We can do it, and I know it from my own experience.